because we had such a good chat beforehand last time. We ran out of time. I don't want to do the same again, which was crazy. And I don't think I've had a Boss It podcast where we've done it in two parts like this.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
yeah, the very first one. So I've started both of those. Yeah, so really good. I enjoyed our conversation a lot last time, and there were a number of things that we discussed at the beginning. And one of the things that I wanted to come back to was you mentioned that you were a CrossFit coach.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So that came about. In fact, CrossFit has been responsible for a number of big decisions I've made in my life. Actually, I've only been doing it for 5. I say big decisions I've made in my life. I got into CrossFit when I was about 45, so 5 years ago.
Right.
And through I'd had kids and had very inconsistent training, and then I think, like everybody's seen either on YouTube or on Amazon or something, the fittest on earth competitions.
Yes.
And I just thought, I really like the look of that. And it just so happened a couple of days after that, I was having my car. I took my car to the garage for a service, and there was a CrossFit box next to it. So I popped in and got signed up and went through the foundations course and learned everything I needed to learn, and then got stuck into it and really enjoyed it.
So for people who don't know, a CrossFit box is essentially the place, is the gym, is the place where people go. They call them the box, don't they?
Yeah, they call it, but I think it's colloquial because basically it's usually a box. It's usually a
industrial unit, isn't it?
Industrial unit, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which is, and it's very sort of spit and sawdust. You seldom have jacuzzis and spas at these places. It's just there's barbells, there's kettlebells, there's
ropes
rigs,
to climb up.
Ropes. It's very sort of very sparse and basic. And I got very much into that. Really enjoyed it. And I think one of the things about CrossFit that happens is it's a fitness methodology, and it is a methodology. I mean, there's a lot of stuff into this. Created by a guy called Greg Glassman, whose whole goal in life is just to promote fitness across the world. And actually, it's to promote health through fitness. Around the world. So slightly subtle thing, but and it's the only. It really does work as a fitness, as a way of getting fit, and all around fit. It does have its criticisms around injuries, which we can touch on in a minute.
And, yes, I was going to mention that one actually, because that is one of the things that comes out of this. And absolutely. I think I can see, and it appealed to me because I could see this sort of all-rounder fitness approach. Mm-hmm. I do various forms of training. I've been involved in triathlon, lots of different types of sport. And I think it's great to have that all-round fitness. I do boxing training, which has got a lot of all-round fitness.
Yeah.
But CrossFit seems to be, as you said, there's a methodology, there's a clear structure. Mm-hmm. They measure about progress, which I think is always is important in where fitness or business.
Absolutely, in everything. Yeah. So it is. It is a methodology, and I've seen, you do see results. A good example is I do a lot of my coaching. I do as foundations, which is introducing people to the club. I introduced a girl, did foundations with about somebody about 3 or 4 months ago, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this if she sees it, but her goal was, she was Kiwi, she wanted to get back to New Zealand, and her goal was to only have to pay for one seat on the flight, right? So that sort of sets a picture of where she was, right?
Yes.
So in those 3 months, I found out yesterday, actually, I was talking to the guy who runs the box. She has lost 42 kilograms.
Wow.
Right. Which is, I've got a 12-year-old daughter, so it's the weight of her. She is, which, and it's not all down to CrossFit, but she's training regularly. She's clearly watching her diet, and that sort of story isn't uncommon, right? It's just, that's your front of your Slimming World magazine kind of story.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Absolutely.
And and fair play to her, because a CrossFit box, a CrossFit gym, can be quite an intimidating place to come when you see all the big weights, you see rings hanging out. It can be so fair play to her. But what got me into coaching was that I was traveling an awful lot with my previous job when I was running when I was running ECI for Europe, I was just all over the place all days and not seeing my kids enough, and also getting a bit pissed off that I wasn't training enough as well. So I just thought that the work-life balance just wasn't there. So I jacked it all in. Didn't have a clue really what I was going to do. I just knew I needed some downtime. And so while I was deciding what to do, I thought, you know what, I'll train to be a CrossFit coach. And so I did the level 1 course, which you actually download all the material for the level 1 course. So it's really interesting stuff. And then I got into doing sort of coaching, teaching the classes, doing a bit of PT, a bit of foundations. And so since I've set up Ambly Innovations, I still do that in the evenings. I do a bit of coaching, substitute taking classes every now and again. And it's just something that it's just, you know, it's sort of my happy place. It's just somewhere I can go, completely divorced from work and family, although of course the family are now introduced to it. And and it's just a really nice place to be.
My impression with CrossFit is that they emphasize the community of encouraging people to work together and the encouragement that they get from each individual. That's an important aspect from what I can see.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that, I mean, they really do encourage that. And it really is there. And I think one of the reasons that happens so well is it's twofold. The first factor is that doesn't matter who you are, because it is cross-functional, right? It is everything. It is strength, it is cardio, it is gymnastics, and mobility comes into that. Nobody comes out of this unscathed, right? So you can come in as an elite athlete, but there's nowhere to hide. There is always something. And you know, we get some elite athletes coming in to the box, but there's always something. So everybody has to, you know, take a dose of humility at some point through this process. The other thing that CrossFit does extremely well is you have what's called the workout of the day. So I'll give you an example of a workout of the day. Is you do 21, 15, 9 deadlifts. So that's just lifting the bar up, and handstand push-ups, right? So that would be lifting the bar 21 times, 21 handstand push-ups, then 15 deadlifts, 15, and you work it through like that. That is not really accessible to everybody, particularly at the weight of the deadlifts, which are, I think for men, it's around 110, 115 kilograms. So that's quite a lot of volume at, you know, reasonably heavy weight.
Sure.
So where that works well is for the elite athletes, so they can all do that. They can all come in and they've been training and they can do the handstand push-ups, they can do the deadlifts. But for handstand push-ups, for example, there's a number of things in there, and it is against the wall, to be fair. But there's a number of factors in there. One, you've got to be able to get upside down and hold it against the wall for a start.
It requires a certain amount of confidence to be able to do that in the first place, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It absolutely does. Yeah. I can remember when I first went along, it's like, I haven't done this since I was in the playground. You know, it's something you don't normally do. So what really works well is you can scale every movement. So instead of doing handstand push-ups, you might start with dumbbell presses, which is an equivalent exercise. Or you might try a handstand push-up, not entirely to the ground. You might have a mat so that you don't doing the full distance. Or, you know, there are variations. And that's what every single movement in CrossFit you can scale to any age, ability. So everything's adaptable. So what you've got is you've got elite athletes coming in to do the workout of the day, along with absolute beginners, everybody working to their degree. And you all walk out battered. So often not always, but most of the time, having and that builds a real sense of community. I think it means you can. It's a bit like the golfing handicap. It's sort of an analogous to that. In that
it is.
You know, it's great. You can have poor players playing with great players, and it's still competitive. And and I think that works extremely well. I think that works.
Do you think you've learned things through CrossFit that you've transferred to the business world? Because I think I did. Yeah, I have from sport. I probably learned as much from sport and from training as I have from actually, you know, being involved in various businesses. What did you learn?
So I think there's a level of tenacity that you put. I mean, that's the obvious thing, but it really is. You know, you're often in a dark place sometimes in a workout, but it does come to the end, and you do get through it. And I think, you know, that when you're running a business, it's very easy to just go, do you know what, this is just not working. I'm just going to sack it off. And I think, you know, just keep going is a very good is something that you bring out. But also, you don't have to be working 100% of the time. And so there are degrees of work and effort, and I think you can transfer that to your business life. Other analogies is, it's progress happens. What gets measured gets
yes.
What gets measured gets managed,
yeah,
right?
Yes.
And
if you don't measure it, you're not going to improve it, because what are you improving upon? Yes, that
absolutely,
idea.
and I think that's one of the key things in CrossFit that you see. I mean, we always log our scores, and often we're referring to, today we're going to be doing this, so you're going to be doing 60% of your 1 rep max, and then we'll test our 1 rep max every now and again, and you can go back to them. But even just recording your scores, you go, well, on these kinds of workouts, I typically do this, and I did this today. So you're constantly seeing that, and you're recording it, and I think that's a really important thing, and that translates extraordinarily well to business. I think.
Yeah. Training is all about, slow progressive overload, isn't it? It's
absolutely,
because the other side to that is he's actually trying to take on too much that is wrong for that development, that level of development at that particular time. You want small increments, and I've seen that particularly with people using weight training, for instance. That's easily measurable.
Yes.
But if you keep trying to take big chunks, the progress then plateaus quite quickly, and people then can find that they're not making the progress. But if they'd made it in smaller increments, gives the body time to adapt. That's an important aspect of business, but measuring the right things within the business as well. Because I've seen I've gone into businesses where they seem to be measuring everything, and it becomes an administration chore where they're spending almost as much time measuring what they're doing, and it's this sort of overload, and we don't all like administration.
No, I mean, I think you've just pretty much described the public sector, haven't you? Right?
Yeah.
Which is, it's more important to measure the process than to get an end result often. I've seen that a little bit. When I worked in education, I saw the process was more important than the actual outcome. And I think that's the risk of measuring too much. You actually lose sight of what you're actually trying to achieve.
So when you so sort of bringing this back to business, and this was a conversation I was having the other day, and we were talking about making progress, and somebody said to me, well, what about when it's not a process? And I said, well, I think it will be. Everything's a process. Even an artist, the painter, has a process.
Absolutely.
They'll get the canvas out and they'll start to sketch, although it's sort of free flowing. They have a process that they would typically follow. So when you go into an organization, you're often brought in where people have processes, but they want those processes to be better. Where do you start from? What's the first thing you do?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, this overlaps. So we have quite a clear process, and the first thing that we look for is strategic alignment. Okay, I mean, so we will go in 2 ways. Okay, for 2 reasons. One, to solve a specific problem. That's often, our AP or AR allocation in finance is just clunky and it's slow. Can you help us solve that? So yes, that's it. Then there's the other side of it where, okay, we've got a number of goals to meet. We know we're inefficient about the business. How can what can we do with automation to help us manage that process? So it's those 2 pieces, a very tactical piece or a much more strategic piece. And often we find the tactical piece, what we want them to do is go from that tactical piece to the more strategic piece, because that builds a longer term relationship. But the first thing we absolutely look for is strategic alignment internally. Okay. And that's, okay, why are we doing this? And what is it we're trying to achieve? Right. And we will build, the team of stakeholders, and it might be, in the case of a finance process, there may be 1 or 2 people involved in that, but you'd be surprised at how 2 people actually are looking for a slightly different outcome. So we define very clearly what that outcome is first. So we look for that strategic alignment first, and it's often the hardest piece.
So that's probably not much difference that you have with your CrossFit clients when you say to them, what is it you want to achieve? Because people come with different outcomes that they want. Yeah, some may want to bulk up and get bigger. Some, like your lady going back home, wanted to reduce in size. That's that strategic goal. What are they aiming to do?
Absolutely. And once you have that, you can say that in words, then you can define what sort of, I mean, what KPIs you're looking at. What are you looking to measure? What does success mean? What does success look like? And there, we will spend, often to the frustration of the client sometimes, a bit more time in that area than they would like and feel comfortable, particularly if we're not getting the clarity that we see. And it's worth that perseverance, because if you don't get alignment across the teams, and everybody is a slightly different, but everybody's coming at things from a slightly different perspective. So that's the first thing we will do. And then, well, let's go to the tactical one first, because it's simpler. Then we'll say, okay, so what is your current process? What is your as-is process? Let's look at that. Let's take a look at that. And so then we will sit in a room, we'll map it out, or somebody will send me an email or what have you, and we'll map it out, and then we'll set up a meeting to discuss that, And I say you set up a meeting, this is not admin heavy. This is, it might be just 10 minutes on a call. We keep things as quickly and quick and as light as we can, and they will, and then we will agree what that as is process is. Again, the amount of disparity you get when what people think a process is versus what it actually is.
Yeah,
is
I've seen that.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, and it's because you have different people in the business who just don't have transparency across the whole thing. But what's really nice then is we will get agreement on that. But typically, particularly if you've got people from different functions and different departments, you'll start to see opportunity because the next phase is to look at what do we want this process at? Now we know what it is. What do we actually want it to look like? And
what do you mean by it's at that stage you start to see opportunity?
Well, because people often don't have full visibility.
Right.
What people are looking at, I didn't know that. Well, what about if could we use that for? And you start to see it starts to spark creativity across
by improving the communication, by getting that alignment and understanding.
Absolutely.
Other people can communicate and then have an input on the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've actually just written an 800-word blog on the hidden benefits of automation, and one of those pieces is one of the things is that it starts to spark creativity and communication across the team.
Yeah.
It starts to build a level of collaboration. As you probably noticed, we just talked about the first two steps. This is more about people than it is about anything else at this point, right? It's trying to get that buy-in, and you're starting to manage the change process, because particularly if you're an automation guy, I mean, this goes back to the 1900s and before then, is hold on, we're bringing robots in, they're gonna get rid of our jobs. And
yes,
that may have been more true in the earlier days, but nowadays I think it's far less of a threat to people.
Well, that's definitely something I want to cover with you, because I do come up against that. I agree with you. It seems to be less prevalent and less of a fear, but I think it's still there. But as regards this process, yes. I mean, why do you think that you're able to sort of facilitate that alignment and that better communication? Because I suppose when you're discussing with companies, it's a fairly obvious thing for them to do, but it's something that they don't do.
Okay, so there's two parts to this. I think one is we're experienced in it. It's what we do as a business.
Sure.
I think the other factor is it comes a little bit down to the whole consultant things. You'll give me a watch and I'll tell you the time. It comes down to this level of embarrassment. The amount of times people don't want us to come in because their processes aren't right yet. It's a bit.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
it's a bit.
I get exactly the same. Is we do want to sell our business. Typically, it's in 3 years' time, but we want to speak to you in probably about a year's time. And what they're saying by that is, we don't want you to come and have a look at our business at the moment. It's horrible.
Yeah. And whereas it's horrible.
Yeah.
I know these people's processes are horrible. They know they should be doing it better, and that's okay.
That
is
it is
absolutely fine.
Because all the other companies I look at, they've got aspects of their business that's really horrible as well. Yeah. And I might be able to help you get there faster or stop you going around the wrong direction. And that's the other thing.
Absolutely. I think when it's that first 100 days in a company when you're not embedded in, is when you probably have the greatest clarity over where the direction should be. And I think that's what it is. You come in and you've got a fresh pair of eyes on it. You're not looking to embarrass anybody at all. You just and you realize everybody's busy, everybody's in the machine, everybody's working, and that's okay. And so I think that's why bringing in an external party to do this, providing you there's a very, very clear ROI and a very, very clear benefit that justifies the cost of bringing somebody in. So
yes.
you know, that's you know, we do that level of consulting, but there's got to be a return for the end for the.
So do you work with the client to look at that clear ROI, because the client doesn't want you involved in a process where there just isn't the return on it, the cost, because there'll be a cost for you, but you don't want to get involved in a project where you get a third of the way in and you go, well, we can get some returns here, but they're not going to be significant. Do you work with them at the beginning?
Yeah, well, in fact, yeah, with some, depending on how we engage, sometimes our pricing is based on ROI, right? So
okay,
I'm so, you know, I'm so
you definitely
convinced.
Don't want to get involved in a project that's not
absolutely.
much ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you're losing money, I'm losing money. It's you know, I'm so passionate about the value that this can bring that, you know, we're quite happy to put money on the line and say that there's got to be real ROI, and in order to do that adds an additional level of rigor up front to say, and it's often quite simple, to be fair, Mark. It's often, you know, this is taking your team. I'll give you a really simple example. We've helped a company with their document management system. I think we may have touched on it last time, but they have a large project and they have literally hundreds and thousands of files that come in during these big builds, that they build big data centers. They have literally huge amounts of schematics, huge numbers of diagrams, lots of technical information. And they have people who have to eyeball these documents. And if possible, if it's a JPEG, for example, you can't cut and paste, they have to type in words into a document manifest and say, you know, you can very easily say, we have spent 300 hours doing this. Okay, so we can write some software. It'll cost you Y to write that software. That will go away. It'll automatically take those documents using a little bit of AI and OCR, optical character recognition, reading, and it'll do that work for you. The ROI on something like that is very, very straightforward and very, very easy. And we can demonstrate, well, in those cases, you're looking at a 90+% ROI in terms of costs and saving. You know, it's so yeah, we're very keen to do that rigor up front and make sure that the customer not only perceives value but sees it as a very real thing. It's critical. It's critical for them. It's critical for us.
So you start off getting that. You do the ROI. You get the strategic alignment. You look at their process as is. This is the time when you start to see opportunity, when you're getting clarity around the objectives and what you're currently doing. What do you then do as your next stage?
So the next stage is we'll do a process redesign. So we will look at how that process in itself, does it need redesign for a start? Usually it does. And once you've got more eyeballs across it with different perspectives, you find that there's often a lot of efficiency savings that can be made. Okay, so we get that and we'll do that, you know, you got your as is process and your to be process at that point.
Yep.
The next thing we will start to do is put together a solution design. So we will look at, okay, so we've got a process. In fact, actually, there's sometimes another step in that we actually change the manual process at that point, right? So they find that they can already make initial savings just through the process redesign rather than, you know, automating it.
Improvement in the process.
Yeah, in the process. So, and that's key. I mean, I think I mentioned to you before, you know, we can automate a bad process and make them lose money faster, right? It's something we can absolutely do. In this case, in this case, we will look at it, we'll optimize the process, and then what we will do is we'll go away and start to look at solution design. Now, there's a key element, and I think this differentiates us a lot from our competition and other people who work. One of the key factors for us at that point is to look at their existing infrastructure, their existing data estate, and what they've got in place. And if they've got tools in-house that has automation, and there's a lot of tools now that do have automation in there, we will try and use their existing estate to facilitate some or all of that automation. It's usually some, and then we will provide the glue where it's not available. So we'll come up with a design based on whatever they've got in house, because we really, really, really do, I can't emphasize this enough, want them to save as much money as possible here, right? So, you know, we write all our, we're constantly looking for the cheapest, best, most efficient tools to use to help end customers. But if they've already got things in place and they've got licenses for this, and I promise you, I'm sure you can give me examples now, Mark, of software that that's deployed in places that's not being used to its greatest ability, right? I'm pretty certain you can.
Yes, yeah. We could have a whole podcast on that.
I'm sure we could. And that's great. That's for me sort of another one of those hidden wins, which is let's use what you've got and let's use it more effectively. So we've got the solution design in place. Next thing we do, we talk about the MVP. What's the minimum viable product? What's the least we can do to deliver the maximum value, or the minimal effective dose almost, when we're talking. And so we will run that, we'll prototype it, get feedback, and then we just go through a standard sort of almost development cycle. So we go through and we'll look at, refining it, looking at stage 2, stage 3, deploying it across the business. Depends how, if it's to the whole business, we've got to consider a rollout plan, a much more rigorous rollout plan. Depending on the nature of the information, we have to look at the data privacy, data protection aspects of this, because a lot of what we do is pulling data from multiple sources, mashing it together, or putting it in a place and then presenting it in a format that's consumable. And in actual fact, that's another hidden benefit of automation, actually, which is it can help you adhere to both auditing and compliance of data regulation, because you have to define very clearly what data is going where and when. Right, and you can have some very, very, you are forced to have the important conversations about, okay, this data is going here, this data is going there. As an example, a great example of this actually, which is onboarding of employees. IT need to set up all their IT bits. HRs need to send out all their contracts. But IT doesn't need to see salaries. They don't need to see various benefits. They don't need to see, unless they're sending something to their house, they don't need to see where they live. So with automation, you can make sure the right data at the right place at the right time. So that's
yes, those IT people often get to see quite a lot.
Yeah. And
I was involved many years ago. I was involved in doing a management buyout of a software company, and we were talking to one of the senior people on the IT side, and as part of this management buyout, we found out how a few of the senior management, what they were being paid, and we were quite shocked. And this came up, and he just smiled, and I said, "You don't seem surprised." He said, "I'm a computer scientist." He said, I know these things. He was able to get access to all of this information.
Of course.
Very easily.
And actually, my experience of that, I mean, obviously finance has access to a lot of that kind of information, but IT people too. And to their credit, my experience has been they're very discreet about it. I think, I've seen a lot of professionalism around that. That says if they don't need to see it, they shouldn't be seeing it. So, so I think that aspect as well is compliance, and of course the audit trail, the auditability. It's very easy to add a log line or a thing to a spreadsheet or to a to some kind of logger to track and audit these things.
Yes.
It's actually essential as well for performance, monitor and manage performance as well. So.
What are the biggest and most common mistakes that you see in people wanting to automate and improve efficiency in their processes?
Number one, the point I mentioned up front, knowing what they're doing and why they're doing it. What's the strategic alignment? Without a doubt, that is number one. And I think that's, we'll all read every textbook in the world and then go and ignore it, right? Because we it's easy just to get stuck in.
Do you think that's also because you don't know what you don't know, and people say, well, we just want to make it more efficient. We just want to get returns, and they think that's it. Yes. They actually haven't really been through a process of an understanding that you really need to have complete clarity and have it in a way that you can communicate to all of your colleagues as well, so you get that alignment. And they've got this vague idea of, well, we want to bottom line, it's about improving bottom line. Yeah, well, that's a start, but
yeah, I think it's sort of the industry shoots itself in the foot a little bit, because we talk about automation makes things faster. We talk about
yes,
low code, fast development, fast iteration. But we don't talk about the actual process of automation itself. The development of what the automation is like anything else. It requires rigor, it requires time, and it requires a massive attention to detail. You are programming, for want of a better term, and that takes time. And so, although the technology is fast, the process can only go at the pace that the process can go. So I think it's easy to make to have shortcut it, go straight to solution design before you've done the rigor up front. And it's pushback that we sometimes get. And I will happily walk away from a project if people aren't prepared to do that, because we talked about that ROI.
yes,
we want success, and we want our customers to have success.
sure, it's going to be part of a failed process, without a doubt. And when you get to the stage of the to be process,
mm-hmm.
How do you communicate that to make sure that you've got clarity and people really do understand? Because the other issue is they've all got their job to do, and you're coming in, and this is going to be additional work on top of what they're normally doing, and that always causes a little bit of a conflict. It's going to be difficult for you, difficult for them to fit into their diary. How do you communicate that new process and get real understanding, rather than they have a quick flick through a document and they see some process and they move on?
There's two factors. There's always two. I'm going to give you three, actually, because I feel like two is a bit. There's a number of ways we do that. First of all, up front, we make sure that the key stakeholders are involved, right? So those people who are going to be involved in the process are notified that they are going to be notified. Typically, when we're engaging, there's going to be somebody senior involved. So what we want from them is buy-in, that they are that this is a real commitment for the business, right? So yes, you are only going to get these gains if this happens. So that's sort of point number one, is make sure that you've got official buy-in from the stakeholders, and particularly the champions and sponsors in the organization of the particular project. Now, with a small automation, and that's often what it is. We often do proof of concepts, free proof of concepts, to be fair. It's a small amount of work, but when you get into something involved, spanning multiple departments, you need that buy-in up front.
Yeah.
Number two, we try and keep everything we send out. We try and minimize the time footprint. Is that a thing? I may have made just something up there, but the amount of time, the time that people have to spend on it. So we try and make it as easy and as consumable as possible. So with something like an as-is process, it's easier to have some kind of visual, usually a workflow diagram, and then a 1 minute, try and keep it down to 1 minute, 1:30 perhaps, accompanying video to walk them through and describe that process. So the idea being, that's when we can't get a meeting. We keep meetings between 15 minutes and 30 minutes, unless there's something, unless we're doing a workshop that needs time and attention. We try and keep that down to the minimum, and we have a regular cadence that we agree with the team up front about how we present information, how this process is going to work, what their time demands are going to be up front. So there's no real surprises there involved, because it is time consuming. And the other thing is, we actually give them more time, right? We talked about the process of automation. There's a number of things that can slow down that process, which is how busy people are. Right? That's a factor. People can't, people getting, it's particularly got senior people involved. Getting multiple senior people involved at the same time is tricky, which is why, and in my experience on that, the only real way to do that is to have a standing meeting in a diary, which is either weekly or monthly. That otherwise it just doesn't get scheduled in, and you don't get that.
Yeah. So I mean, what we were covering were some of the common pitfalls, and I guess what we're covering here is preventing that lack of momentum that you can get, where a process the process change can be drawn out so much that you start getting people change in their role, and people forget why you're even doing it.
Exactly.
You've got to keep that speed up all the time. What are the other common pitfalls that you find, that perhaps where people have tried to do this themselves, and sometimes they can end up, as you say, they just lose more money more quickly?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest challenges of people doing it themselves is, I'm going to give you two again. Is one, they haven't got, no one person really has the requisite skill set to do a full deployment. It requires project management skills, it requires process management skills, and it requires development skills usually, and some kind of technical skills, and often infrastructure skills as well, being able to set up systems and what have you. So it's very difficult for one person to do that. So then what you're doing is you've got so taking that into consideration, then you've got to build a team of people often. So you've got to have multiple people involved in this project. So you've got to be very serious about this as a discipline, or as an initiative within an organization often.
Sure.
And then when it's not, if you're just looking to do small things like, okay, we get the spreadsheet every week and I want to put the data over here, that sort of thing you can fire off to a techie person, and it isn't hugely, I say a techie person, I mean that with all due respect, it's a global term, say over to somebody to do. Yeah, you can start to deliver things, but then what you find is, if you start to go, oh, that's great, we did that, we've got a great return on that, now let's do this, now let's do that, now let's do the other, and what you find is a bunch of disjointed technology across the organization that nobody really knows how it works exactly. After a bit, that over time it ages. People go, oh god, yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, they've changed their licensing system on that software now, and this no longer works. And like everything else, I think process and technology actually wears out as the process changes. Technology, the surrounding infrastructure and environment changes, so things just stop working for various reasons. So that whole maintenance piece doesn't get considered. So yeah, that's great, we've got it working, and then for how long is it going to be working? How do we keep it maintained? How do we remain on top of it? Is probably that's the other big factor. And the other one is factoring in time. People don't factor enough time to get the work done, and it just becomes shelved as a side project, when the benefits of automation done right can really transform the operational side of a business.
That was more than 2 points then.
It definitely was. I realised that.
That's good. Yeah,
I realised that. Yeah. I just thought of two and I did a bunch on.
See, when you get flowing, it's surprising what comes out. So, what do you think where we are now? Because there is a lot of discussion about computer automation, in looking at it from various angles. What do you see the future? And I'm not talking about 10 years in the future, because I think actually that's almost ridiculous to talk about, because things move so quickly and things change so much. I definitely haven't got a crystal ball that will tell me 10 years in the future, but we can make some educated guesses as to what will be happening maybe 18 months or 2 years.
Yeah.
What are the trends that you're seeing, and what you believe are going to be the exciting aspects? Because I do think this is an exciting aspect that many businesses will be able to leverage. I think they need a change in their mindset, and there's some education needed before they'll really get the benefit of this. But it's a massive opportunity, or it's a massive threat. Because if you're not doing it, your competition probably will.
Yes.
Then you're going to be behind. You're going to be playing catch up. So what do you see as being the trends here around improving process, computer automation?
I think there's in the very short term, I think there's one key area that's emerging as the biggest birth of or automation is leading the birth of this technology to a large degree, which is low code or no code development.
Right.
And I know you're involved in that, but I think there's that and AI, but I'm loath to say AI, because AI is massive, and there's this, it's I mean,
it's a term that's been abused, isn't it, to a certain extent? It's been abused by marketing, but there is some really interesting technology and there's some great things happening now, but there's cynicism and there's a lot of hype. So maybe if we start off with the no code area, and I mean, that's an area I do focus on, and there's a project I'm working on at the moment, because I, like you, I think there's enormous potential. Maybe the concept of no code, maybe not some of the no code, low code that's around at the moment, but the idea of being able to write better software faster, and more people being able to collaborate. So in that broader term, I think massive opportunity again. What do you see as being the benefits there?
Collaboration, without a doubt, is a key aspect of that. I also think creativity as well. I think.
Well, yeah.
I think
absolutely spot on. Yeah.
I think you're bringing a traditionally hyper technical discipline you're bringing that into the hands of more of the lay people. So you're in the way that tools like Photoshop now have to be in the arsenal of every graphic designer. I think that we're going to start seeing project managers, process engineers, document managers having access to tools that actually work in terms of a drag and drop kind of interface, and being able to create some extraordinarily sophisticated workflows and integrations and front ends that all link up. Yes. With very good low code or no code capabilities. And I mean, I keep my eye on what the automation tools are in the market, and I am seeing almost on a weekly basis, not weekly, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but very regularly, new tools coming to market that are superseding, that are easier to use, that have greater functionality and depth, and are going further with that no code and their capabilities of low code and no code than the currently available. So I'm not going to name names on here, but there's a number of tools out there that are doing automation and RPA that are, you can get so far with their drag and drop and their interfaces, and then it just becomes very clunky, and you have to revert back to code, and coding becomes much faster very rapidly with a lot of these tools. And you're introducing, I mean, you're always going to have to introduce sort of basic development concepts, things like decision flows and conditional statements and iteration. That's inevitable.
Yes,
to bring that to the mass. But you've already got that in Excel, for want of a better. You're already doing, any adept Excel can do an if statement, or run a function, a reason. And I think that's going to be the level of sophistication that users are going to need. You're not going to have to, if they want to, for example, we did a non-disclosure agreement automation fairly recently, where we called out to the to Companies House, HMRC Companies House API, pulled in. They put in a name, and then it came back with a number of suggestions of the company, and it pulled in the company number, the address, and which is a nice API, I think, but we still had to code that. I think those I think what will happen is there will be a standard where people are developing APIs to a standard, so that these low code and no code tools are literally, I wonder if Companies House have got one. Oh yeah, look, and drag and drop it in, and then you just you put in your credentials, and bang, away you go. You got that interface, and it's just a case of going, here's the data. Where do I want it to go? I think that's where it's getting to. In the next 12, 18 months, we are rapidly getting to that point. And I think then we will see an automation explosion. I absolutely do. I don't think it'll, I'd say, am I doing my business out of a job in that it's going to be much more successful? I don't think so, for all the reasons we've already discussed in this call, right?
No, absolutely. And I think in some respects that there's some of the promises around no code, low code, and the way that it's been marketed has alienated some really good technical people, because they can see through that, and it's being pushed as though you don't need coders anymore. And you don't need the people with that expertise. You don't need the people with the experience. And you need them just as much. But you can move a lot faster and more people can be involved and collaborate on this. And I think that's one of the benefits.
Oh, that visual collaboration, that whole that whole rapid prototyping thing is just brilliant from low code. I think that low code and no code, we're going to just get there so well. And so we can collaborate very quickly. That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
That's definitely something I need to have a conversation with you. I'm not announcing it yet on anything I'm doing, but I'd like to have a conversation with you about that one, because I think we're very much aligned around that and both equally excited about it. Artificial intelligence, we touched upon that. It's discussed a lot. It has been overhyped, but all of the time that hype has been ongoing. There have been some clever people working away. There's been an awful amount of money that's been thrown at it. And I think I might mention to you, my view about artificial intelligence changed during COVID, where I was actually talking to and seeing many more software companies, in particular artificial intelligence and things like RPA. And with the evidence of what I was seeing they were able to achieve, it changed my view, definitely. That there's some really exciting technology coming along now that will really make a difference.
I completely agree. I think I'm hugely excited by artificial intelligence. I've nearly finished, haven't quite finished it yet. I don't know whether you read Max Tegmark's book Life 3.0. I don't know whether you've read.
No, I haven't. No.
And that takes sort of that takes AI to. It's looking at its impact on mankind, really.
So who was the author again? Max
Tegmark, I believe.
Because what we usually do is we'll put a link, any books that recommended, and we'll put it at the end. But Max Tegmark, we'll check that one.
Yeah, Max Tegmark. Yeah. Fascinating book, and he talks about the concept of AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. So, when is artificial intelligence going to be like a human?
Okay. Right.
And he creates a great image. It's stuck in my mind. I say it's great because it's not just because it's stuck in my head, but it really is a great visualization. He talks about various feats of the human brain and the human capability and what we can do as humans. And he shows us as a mountain range. And he shows sort of things like adding and subtracting, multiplication, that sort of, being able to have a conversation, this sort of thing, drawing a picture, these sorts of things, creating art, creating music.
Yes.
And he has these on different pinnacles at different levels, and he shows the rising watermark as each of these points get hit, and each of these peaks get beaten and get taken over and get sunk by AI. And it's how long are we going to get? Is it going to take before we get to AGI? And he effectively talks about. I know we've gone a little bit off tangent here, but
no, go ahead. That's what my podcasts are all about. I end up talking about so many different things. I enjoy that.
Okay, so he talks, and he eventually talks about the fact that almost our. I mean, I don't know if you heard that statement that humans were created by the universe to experience itself, right? I think that's something it talks about. I don't know if you've heard that before, but then we talk about we're almost going to be the architects of the next humans, right? So we're going to create robots or whatever this artificial intelligence is in a way that it's not going to have this limitation of 100 years. It will be able to reach and go to the stars because it'll, it's not going to be subject to the limitations that we are, and we will be, and the humans at the moment, and maybe the next stage of AI are going to be the architects of that life 3.0 for one of it, or for one of a better term, and how we are going to be the founders of we're going to be playing God to the next next.
Yeah, it's almost sort of a limitless potential that you can see out there as this develops. But it does bring genuine fear for people. But I think education and discussions like this can also help some people with that fear. Fear is often a lot of that is often the fear of the unknown, where people hear artificial intelligence, I'm going to lose my job to a robot. Whereas I think it can be actually inspiring to say, what do you currently do during the day? What do you really enjoy? Where you've got 40% of your job, well, actually it's repetitive and it's mundane, and it's probably well beneath your capability. And that can be handled in a form of computer automation. There's some artificial intelligence that can augment your experience and help you do what you do better.
Absolutely.
And help you do more of what you love.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that term augment is absolutely the right term. It is a tool, and so it is very. I mean, I just talked about artificial general intelligence. These super brains that are going to go out to the universe and conquer it and do whatever. But actually, we're not there yet. We're nowhere near to that yet.
No.
Just because a behavior appears very human doesn't mean that it right. is.
No.
And
I won't be interviewing a robot on my podcast very soon.
Well, not in the next 18 months.
No. Because I mean, that's a key aspect. I think that actually is quite important, because if you think about it, as human beings, one of the things that we crave is social interaction. And that is so important for us. That's where, when they talk about artificial intelligence in the area of art, I start to have not concerns, but I think that what art is one human being communicating to another. This is what I feel about something, or this is what I've seen. Would I care what a robot sees? There's a different slant in it. You know what I mean? If you would say to me after this call, by the way, I'm a photographer, and I use my photography because sometimes it's just to sort out something in my own head. I did a picture probably 18 months ago, which was my reaction of going into the local town where I live, and at around about sort of dusk, experiencing this weird feeling of seeing people very quietly walking around with masks on, and me just stepping back from it and thinking, I would have never imagined this in my lifetime. And this is quite weird and eerie. And I just wanted to translate that and put it into an image, which I did. And at the end of that, when I posted it, I got thousands of comments and people coming back to me and saying, that's it. That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
Now, that's me communicating to a number of people that I'll probably never speak to, most of those people.
Yeah.
It was communication. And I thought that was important. It was important to me and some of the people that saw it.
I absolutely agree. I think, we can go in many directions with this, but you're right. If it's produced by an AI algorithm of some description, something, then it doesn't have the same meaning, other than it can look nice, right? It's a nice image, right?
Bit of wall art, to make the room look pretty. Could possibly be, yes.
If you're using it to communicate something very human, which you've just described there, which is a very particular, very unusual period of time where we all felt a little bit strange and out of sorts, and to some degree very much alienated from one another. You were the enemy, right? That everybody walking down the street was effectively, they could kill you. They were the enemy, which is a very unnatural. If everybody's like that's true. And you all clearly captured an element of that in your image. Now, just a robot taking that picture does not have the same.
No, I can see what happened was it helped me in my thought processes. That it's in the same way that I think debate and having people with opposing views that can accept that you've got a different view to mine, but we can stay friends, is really important. And I think that's something that we should be teaching, the next generation. And I think social media can create polarity, whereby I'm going to say this and I'm going to say that, and we'll never meet. Actually, there should be these discussions. Say, it doesn't matter. You may have completely opposite opinion to me, but it's still worth us discussing this. And for me, going through this process was helping me, because that discussion can sometimes help you think more deeply about your view on a particular subject. And sometimes you may think, actually, I'm going to change. Have we never changed our opinion about things, about people, about subjects? In the same way, in creating an image about this feeling that I had, I realized part of that eerie feeling that I was experiencing was you see all these people walking past you with masks that is covering their mouth. and you lose the expression. When somebody walks towards you and they smile and nod, you see them as being a friendly being.
Yes.
If they've got an angry expression, you're going to have a slightly different reaction to them. But with these masks, I couldn't tell.
You had nothing.
No.
Did you find it like it helped? Did you find like not the process, obviously the process of taking the photograph, but the process of sharing that photograph? Did you find that
it absolutely did? Yeah. I realized that was probably one of the main aspects. It was at a half light as well, and it was a bit foggy, and it was coming up to Christmas time. But the main thing, so what I did is I brought somebody into the image really up close, and they had a mask on, and they're looking sideways at me, and that was creating that bit of tension. I had them walking out the image, which is a sort of a visual metaphor or visual way of creating tension. But you felt it, or at least I did, and some people saw the same image, and they reacted to it in the same way.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'll send you a link, or I
was going to say I'd love to see it.
I'll post it in the podcast. But I think that's discussing these things, and that's one of the reasons why I like to do these podcasts, and that's why I like to have this sort of free roaming discussions we have. We've touched upon lots of different topics here, but I know that there's going to be some people out there who are going to be saying, I really get that, I really understand, but I hadn't thought of that, or I don't agree, and that's fine too. I always say to people, come back and say if you don't agree, we'll go and do another discussion about it.
I think, you talk about passing that on, that ability to have friendly, almost friendly conflict, right? Which is, I think it's one of the greatest things. It's one of the nicest things about getting a bit older, right?
Yes,
which is just being able to completely disagree.
Yeah.
Having your own opinion and not being offended, and knowing you're not offending the people you're having a dialogue with. And I think you've touched on a very real danger, both of modern society and particularly the youth in modern society, is that polarity that social media brings, that prevents people who would ordinarily get on.
Yes.
Apart from a couple of factors, actually, it's driving a wedge between, driving a wedge where you would have a load of much more harmony. It's just you're driving a wedge, you're pushing them on one side and the other, and then social media compounds that even worse by compounding and sending messages to reinforce their beliefs.
Yes,
which further alienates the. Hey, we talk about AI. There's AI right there in terms of
absolutely. People having an opinion on a subject that's being reinforced by their behaviour because they've been angered that there's somebody who's got a different opinion.
Exactly.
And I think, do we want to be surrounded by people? You've probably got the same. I've got friends who will have many different opinions to me. Mm-hmm. But they're still friends. Absolutely. And I wouldn't want it any other way. You want that mix of people, somebody, who challenges you. They challenge you in your own opinions. And sometimes we might even change our opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of times you convince you're right with somebody before you go into a discussion, and then they bring something up that you are just not considered.
Yes. Wow. Exactly.
That's blown everything.
But I think that's a great way to try and move through life, because it takes the pressure off yourself, isn't it? Mm-hmm. To think you've always got to be right. I admit, many times I'm wrong lots of the time. But I'll learn by it and I'll move on.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's an age and humility thing, isn't it? I think
it does get that. That's one of the benefits of getting older. What's the key lesson that you've learned in life or business, something that you like to live by? As we're sort of looking to wrap up the podcast, what's the leaving message maybe for the people who have been listening to this?
I think I touched on this before, but it's there all. It's do what you love, right? It's it's easy to get caught up in the trappings of things, and I have certainly this time around of going out on my own. When money's been scarce, the underlying feeling is I'm just generally happier, right? Life is better, and as a consequence, I'm a better contributor to society and to my family, And I think I feel, and I think entrepreneurs feel this more than others, perhaps. I know I'm not trying to put myself in a particular box of any kind of thought, but I think going to work, if you every day just grinding out and hating it is just the worst thing, right? It's very easy to say when we as a middle class white man living in England, right? It's very easy for me to say, do what you love, right? Yes. I don't. It doesn't matter what happens. The worst that's going to happen to me is I'm going to have to sell my house and buy something smaller, right? And then go and work in Costa Coffee, right? That's as bad as it gets for me. So it's very easy for me to say that, but it is something I genuinely believe in. I think if you do what you love and are compassionate to those around you, I think that's be a nice person, be a good citizen. If you do those two things, I think you'll go a long way. Certainly in the Western society that I live in, and so that they're the biggest lessons, I think.
That's a great lesson. Yeah, and I think that comes across in talking to you. I've felt that energy and the passion that you've got for what you're doing, and I think that's engaging. I think a lot of people listening to the podcast, and the first part that we did, where we got so caught up in the conversation, we ran out of time.
Yeah. Well, that's an indication. Likewise, Mark. You're clearly the same, right? That's right. And
try to do.
I think creating a medium of a podcast where you get to talk to people who you like, you're interested in, and can provide these. Great.
I'm continually surprised actually by the people that I speak to, because quite often, this is for the software sector, and it's software entrepreneurs, and a few other people listen to it as well, I find out. But how we see, there's lots of other aspects that affect their life, and I like to see that sort of more rounded side, because I think we can all learn from each other. I'm sure that there's a lot of people that would have learned from listening to you today. So thank you very much for coming along. I've really enjoyed both the podcasts. It's gone very, very well. And as always, I'd say to the people listening to this is, if you've enjoyed listening to Nick and you'd like to find out more about what he does and Amberley Innovations, how's the easiest way to get hold of you?
Probably, if you're in the business world, get me on LinkedIn. Nick Gradwell. I think there's not many of me around.
And not Gladwell, as I
not Gladwell. Not Gladwell. I think we mentioned Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah.
10,000 hours, I was thinking.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the best place to get me. Or if you're interested in CrossFit, search my name up on the CrossFit coaches, level 1 coaches, and you'll find me in Amersham. And
we'll put a link to your LinkedIn page at the end of this podcast.
That would be great. Thank you.
But
Mark.
For now, thank you very much, and it's been really good fun.
Likewise, Mark. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for that.
Super. Thanks very much.
Take care. Cheers.